The transport shuttle shook as it passed through the docking gates of Station Corinth 7. Una pressed her face against the small window and watched the massive structure grow larger and larger until it filled her entire view. She had seen pictures before, but pictures were nothing compared to this. The station was bigger than any city she had ever known. Lights blinked across its surface like stars that had fallen from the sky and decided to stay. She was 24 years old. She had trained for 6 years on Earth. She had beaten thousands of other candidates to earn her place here. And now, sitting in this shuttle with her small bag of belongings, she felt very small indeed. The other passengers around her were not human. A Rithani male sat across the aisle, his forearms folded neatly across his chest, his scaled skin catching the light whenever he moved. Behind her, 2 Velith females whispered to each other in their strange, singing language. They did not look at Una. Nobody looked at Una. Humans had joined the Galactic Coalition only 18 years ago. In a galaxy where some species had been traveling between stars for 10,000 years, 18 years was nothing. Humans were the new ones, the primitive ones, the ones who still had to prove they belonged. The shuttle landed with a soft bump. Una grabbed her bag and followed the other passengers into the station. The air smelled different here, clean and cold and somehow empty, like it had been made by machines instead of trees and wind. A voice spoke over the station's speakers in 5 different languages. Una understood only the human words. All new cadets report to Orientation Hall 7. She followed the signs through long corridors filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some walked on 2 legs like her. Some walked on 4. Some floated. One creature that looked like a cloud of blue smoke drifted past her, and she felt a strange tickle in her mind as it passed. Orientation Hall 7 was enormous. Hundreds of cadets stood in neat rows, organized by species. Una found the human section easily. There were only 12 of them. 12 humans out of hundreds of cadets. She took her place in line and waited. A door opened at the front of the hall, and Commander Veth walked in. Una had read about him in her training files. He was Rithani, 7 feet tall, with 4 powerful arms and skin covered in scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now, they were a cold, pale blue. He moved to the center of the stage and looked out at the assembled cadets with eyes that seemed to see everything. "Welcome to the Combat Integration Program," he said. His voice was deep and carried easily across the hall. "You are here because you are the best your species has to offer. But being the best on your world means nothing here. Here, you start from 0. Here, you prove yourselves again." He began to walk slowly across the stage. Each species brings natural advantages to combat. The Rithani have 4 arms and superior reflexes. The Velith have telepathic coordination that allows them to fight as one mind. The Makra have armored exoskeletons that can stop most projectile weapons. He paused when he reached the end of the stage nearest the human section. His eyes moved across the 12 of them, and Una felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. "Humans," he said slowly, "have adaptability." He let the word hang in the air. "We shall see if that is enough." Una kept her face still and her back straight. She did not look away from his eyes. After orientation, the cadets were assigned to their barracks. Una found herself in Barracks 7C with 9 other cadets from different species. Her bed was in the corner, small and narrow, with a thin mattress and a single blanket. The Rithani cadet next to her had a bed twice as large, with special supports for his extra arms. Nobody spoke to her as she unpacked her bag. The Velith cadet named Sira watched her for a moment with her large, dark eyes, but she said nothing. Una did not mind. She had expected this. That evening, she went to the mess hall for dinner. The food dispensers offered options for every species. Yuna selected a simple meal of rice and vegetables. It did not taste like the food from home, but it was close enough. She found an empty table in the corner and sat alone. Around her, cadets from different species gathered in groups, talking and laughing and sharing stories. The humans, she noticed, sat together at a single table near the back. She thought about joining them, but something held her back. She did not want to hide among her own kind. She wanted to see, to listen, to learn. A shadow fell across her table. She looked up and saw a human man standing there. He was older than her by a few years, with short black hair and a scar that ran from his left eyebrow down to his jaw. His name tag read, Taiwu. Mind if I sit? He asked. Yun, a gestured to the empty seat across from her. He sat down with his own tray of food and studied her for a moment. You are one of the new ones, he said. From Earth. Sol District? Yes. She nodded. How did you know? I read the new cadet files. Part of my job. He picked up his chopsticks and began to eat. I have been here for 3 years. Long enough to learn a few things. What kind of things? He smiled, but there was no humor in it. The aliens here do not hate us. That would require them to think about us. Mostly, they just do not believe we belong. They think we are here because of politics, not ability. He set down his chopsticks and looked at her directly. Proving them wrong is the only language they understand. Yuna thought about this. And have you? Proven them wrong? Taiwu touched the scar on his face. I am still here. That is proof enough for now. They finished their meal in comfortable silence. Before he left, Taiwu stopped and turned back to her. Your first combat simulation is tomorrow at dawn, he said. Get some rest. And remember, they will be watching you. Every move, every mistake. Make them count. That night, Yuna lay in her narrow bed and listened to the station hum around her. Strange sounds filled the barracks. The breathing of aliens, the soft clicks and whistles of their dreams. She was far from home, far from everything she knew. She closed her eyes and remembered something her grandmother had told her when she was a child, back in Seoul, back when the stars were just lights in the sky and not places where people lived. The small stone breaks the river, her grandmother had said. Not by fighting the water, but by refusing to move. Yuna smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow, she would show them what a small stone could do. Training Hall Epsilon was the largest room Yuna had ever seen. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above her head, and the walls stretched so far that she could barely see them. Right now, the hall was filled with floating rocks of different sizes, drifting slowly through the air like clouds made of stone. Zero gravity. Asteroid field combat. Yuna floated near her squad's starting position, holding onto a safety rail with one hand. Her combat suit felt heavy and strange, even though it weighed nothing in zero gravity. Around her, her squad mates prepared their weapons and checked their equipment. There were 5 of them in total. 4 aliens and 1 human. Yuna had learned their names during the briefing. Doan, a young Rithani male with bright golden scales. Kira, a Makra female whose armored body made soft clicking sounds when she moved. 2 Velith twins named Ora and Myra, who communicated in thoughts instead of words. And Yuna, the human from Earth. Duhan was their squad leader. He had made this very clear from the moment they assembled. Listen carefully, he said, his voice sharp and commanding. Our mission is simple. We capture the enemy beacon while defending our own. I will lead the main assault. Kira and the twins will provide support. He turned his 4 eyes toward Yuna. You will stay in the rear. Watch our backs. Do not get in the way. Yuna nodded without argument. Understood. Dohan blinked, as if he had expected her to protest. When she did not, he turned away and continued his briefing. The twins exchanged a glance. Kira's armored face showed no expression, but Yuna thought she saw something like curiosity in the alien's small, dark eyes. A horn sounded across the training hall. The simulation had begun. Dohan launched himself forward immediately, using the small thrusters built into his combat suit. He moved fast, almost too fast, his forearms grabbing rocks and rails to change direction with sharp, aggressive movements. The others followed in formation behind him. Yuna pushed off more slowly. She kept her distance from the group, floating from rock to rock, watching everything. The enemy squad appeared within minutes. They were led by a Makra cadet named Braun, a massive creature covered in black armor that seemed to eat the light around it. His squad moved with careful coordination, spreading out to surround Dohan's group. The fighting started fast and brutal. Energy bolts flashed through the air. Dohan's combat staff spun in his four hands, blocking and striking in patterns too quick for Yuna's eyes to follow. Kira charged forward, her armored body absorbing hits that would have killed an unprotected fighter. The twins moved as one, their telepathic link allowing them to attack from two directions at the same moment. But something was wrong. Yuna watched from behind a large asteroid, her eyes moving from fighter to fighter. The enemy squad was not trying to win. They were trying to delay. Every attack pushed Dohan's group further from the enemy beacon, not closer. And while Dohan fought harder and harder, the enemy seemed almost relaxed. They were cycling their attacks in a pattern. High, low, left, right. Over and over, the same sequence. It was so simple that nobody noticed it. Nobody except Yuna. She looked past the fighting, toward the enemy beacon. Two guards floated near it, but they were watching the main battle, not their surroundings. The path between her position and the beacon was clear. Yuna made her decision. She pushed off from the asteroid and began to move. Not toward the battle, but around it. She used the floating rocks as cover, keeping herself hidden, moving slowly and carefully while the others fought. Dohan's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Human, where are you going?" "Return to position." She turned off her communicator. The two guards saw her when she was 20 meters from the beacon. They raised their weapons, but Yuna was already moving. She grabbed a small rock as she passed it and threw it hard at the first guard's helmet. In zero gravity, the rock flew straight and true. It hit with a crack and the guard spun away, disoriented. The second guard fired at her. Yuna twisted her body, feeling the energy bolt pass close enough to warm her skin. She reached the beacon's platform and grabbed the capture device with both hands. The light turned green. Capture complete. A loud horn echoed through the training hall. The simulation was over. Yuna floated in place, breathing hard as the zero gravity slowly returned to normal. Around her, the asteroids began to drift downward, settling onto the floor of the hall. The other cadets landed one by one, their faces showing different expressions of shock and confusion. Dohan landed in front of her. His golden scales had turned dark red, a sign of anger in Rithani culture. His four hands were clenched into fists. "You disobeyed my orders," he said. His voice was quiet, but there was danger in it. Yuna met his eyes without looking away. "Your orders were wrong." The words hung in the air between them. Dohan's scales grew darker. For a moment, Yuna thought he might strike her right there, in front of everyone. Then Kira stepped forward. The Makra-Az armored body moved between them, not threatening, just present. "She won the match," Kira said simply. "Does the method matter?" Dohan stared at Kira, then at Yuna, then turned and walked away without another word. The twins followed him, but one of them, Aura or Myra, looked back at Yuna with something that might have been respect. That evening, Yuna sat alone in the barracks, cleaning her combat suit. The other cadets had gone to dinner, but she was not hungry. Her mind kept replaying the simulation, looking for mistakes. looking for things she could have done better. A shadow fell across her bed. She looked up and saw a human woman standing there. Short hair, sharp eyes, a face that looked like it rarely smiled. Her name tag read June. "You are the one who captured the beacon," June said. It was not a question. Yuna nodded. Geun sat down on the bed next to her without asking permission. "I have been at this academy for 2 years. Mars colony, before that. I learned something important very quickly here." She paused. "Being invisible keeps you alive. Being noticed gets you killed. I was just trying to win the match." "I know. And you did." June leaned closer. "But you also embarrassed a Rithani cadet from a powerful military family. In front of his squad mates. In front of the instructors." She shook her head slowly. "You know you just painted a target on yourself, right?" Yuna thought about this for a moment. Then she nodded. "Yes." June studied her face, looking for fear or regret. She found neither. A small smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Good," she said. "Then you are not as naive as you look." She stood up and walked toward the door. Before she left, she stopped and looked back. Commander Veth was watching your match from the control room. He watched the whole thing without saying a word. She paused. "I do not know if that is good or bad, but I thought you should know." The door closed behind her. Yuna sat alone in the empty barracks, thinking about targets and stones and rivers that refused to stop flowing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. She would be ready for them. 1 week passed. Then 2. Yuna trained every day, ate her meals alone, and slept in her small corner of the barracks. She did not try to make friends. She did not try to be noticed. She simply worked harder than everyone else and let her results speak for themselves. Her scores improved with each simulation. She was not the strongest cadet. She was not the fastest. But she could read a battlefield better than anyone expected. She saw patterns that others missed. She knew where enemies would move before they moved there. The instructors began to notice. Commander Veth still said nothing to her, but she sometimes felt his eyes following her during training exercises. Other cadets started to watch her too. Some with curiosity, some with respect, and some, like Dahan, with something darker. The Rithani cadet had not spoken to Yuna since the simulation, but she heard things. She heard that his family had contacted him, expressing disappointment that he had been shown up by a human. She heard that he had been training alone for hours every night, pushing himself harder and harder. She heard that his scales turned red whenever someone mentioned her name. The storm was coming. Yuna could feel it. One afternoon, the cadets gathered in Lecture Hall 3 for a class on tactical psychology. The instructor was a Velith female named Hala. She was older than most Velith, with silver patterns on her blue skin that showed her age and experience. Unlike many aliens, she treated humans with genuine respect. During the Fringe Wars, she had fought alongside human soldiers and seen what they could do. "Today we discuss combat intuition," Hala said, her voice soft but clear. "The ability to predict enemy movements before they happen. Some species are born with this gift. Velith telepathy allows us to sense hostile intent. Makra can feel vibrations in the air that warn them of attacks. But what about species without these natural abilities?" She turned and looked directly at the human section of the room. Humans have developed combat intuition to an unusual degree. Not through telepathy or enhanced senses, but through something simpler: experience. A Rithani cadet raised one of his 4 hands. Doan. "Instructor, with respect, what kind of experience could humans have that other species do not?" Hala smiled slightly. Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other. War after war, generation after generation. They learned to read intention in a twitch of muscle, a shift of weight, a change in breathing. They had to, because their enemies looked exactly like them. So they are good at fighting because they are violent, Dawn said. That does not seem like something to admire. Violent? Hala tilted her head. Perhaps, but also survivors. Humans do not have 4 arms or telepathy or armored skin. Yet they are still here. They earned their place in this coalition not through gifts, but through refusal to die. Dawn stood up. His scales were beginning to turn red. With respect, instructor, that sounds like a polite way of saying they are primitive. The room went silent. Every eye turned to Hala, waiting for her response. The Velith instructor did not look angry. She did not look offended. She simply looked at Dawn with those ancient silver-marked eyes and said, Cadet Dawn, the primitive survive. The refined often do not. Dawn's scales turned darker. He sat down without another word, but his 4 hands were clenched tight under his desk. After class, Yuna walked through the corridor toward the mess hall. She was thinking about what Instructor Hala had said, about violence and survival and the things that made humans different, when she heard footsteps behind her. 4 footsteps, moving fast. She turned. Dahan stood there, his golden scales now almost completely red. Other cadets stopped in the corridor, sensing that something was about to happen. Human, Doan said. His voice was controlled, but barely. I challenge you to a proving ground match, official, recorded, public. The proving ground was where cadets settled disputes through combat. It was a tradition older than the academy itself. Matches were legal, supervised, and considered a rite of passage. Refusing a challenge was seen as weakness. Yuna looked at Dahan. She saw the anger in his scales, the tension in his forearms, the wounded pride in his eyes. She understood what this was really about. It was not about the simulation. It was about everything humans represented to him. Every insult to his family honor. Every suggestion that perhaps his species was not as superior as they believed. I accept, she said. The words spread through the station like fire. A human had accepted a proving ground challenge from a Rithani. Most people thought it was suicide. Rithani were stronger, faster, and had twice as many limbs. The betting among cadets was 10-1 against Yuna. Taiwu found her in the training room that evening. She was practicing basic movements, slow and controlled, conserving her energy for tomorrow. You do not have to do this, he said. There are ways to back out. No one would blame you. I would blame me. He sighed. The Rithani fighting style is built around their 4 arms. They attack in patterns that assume their opponent cannot defend against multiple strikes at once. No human has ever beaten a Rithani in single combat. Yuna continued her practice. Then I will be the first. The next day, the proving ground was filled with spectators. Cadets of every species packed the observation areas, eager to watch the match. Even Commander Veth attended, standing alone on the upper platform with his arms folded across his chest. Yuna entered the arena from the east door. She wore standard combat gear and carried a single weapon, a human-designed combat baton, simple and light. Dahan entered from the west door. He carried traditional Rithani combat staffs, one for each of his 4 hands. And his scales glowed bright gold in the arena lights. The match began. Dahan attacked immediately, all 4 staffs spinning in deadly patterns. He was faster than Yuna had expected, his movements sharp and precise. She blocked what she could and dodged what she could not, her body moving on instinct. The crowd watched in silence. This was not supposed to be a match. This was supposed to be a demonstration of Rithani superiority. But Yuna was still standing. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Then 3. Dahan pressed harder, his attacks becoming wilder as his frustration grew. Yuna did not try to match his strength. She redirected. She angled. She let his strikes pass by her with millimeters to spare. She was waiting, watching, reading dot, and then she saw it. Doan favored his upper right arm. When he overextended with it, there was a gap in his defense. A small gap, open for less than a second, but it was there. She let him overextend. His staff slammed into her shoulder. Pain exploded through her body. She felt something pop and knew her shoulder was dislocated. But she was already inside his guard. Her baton struck his throat. Then his knee. Then the nerve cluster at the base of his spine. 3 hits in less than a second. Dohan collapsed. The arena fell completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. A human had just defeated a Rithani in single combat. For the first time in recorded history, Yuna stood over Doan, breathing hard, her shoulder hanging at a wrong angle. Pain made her vision blur at the edges. But she stayed standing. Slowly, she reached down with her good hand. Dohan stared at her. His scales were pale now, almost white. The color of shock. The color of shame. For a long moment, he did not move. Then, slowly, he took her hand. She helped him to his feet. They stood there together. 2 cadets from species that were supposed to be enemies, and something passed between them that neither could name. The crowd began to murmur. Then to talk. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single pair of hands began to clap. Others joined in. Commander Veth descended from the observation platform. He walked across the arena floor until he stood directly in front of Yuna. His scales were a neutral gray, revealing nothing. Report to my office at 0600 tomorrow. Cadet, he said. Then he turned and walked away without another word. Yuna watched him go. Her shoulder screamed with pain. Her legs felt like water. But she was still standing. The small stone had not moved, and the river was beginning to change course. Yuna arrived at Commander Veth's office at exactly 0600. Her shoulder had been repaired by the medical team, but it still ached when she moved. She stood outside the door for a moment, then pressed the entry button. The door slid open. Veth's office was smaller than she expected. Simple furniture, bare walls, and a large window that looked out at the stars. The commander stood with his back to her, watching something on a holographic display. Close the door, he said without turning around. She did. The room became very quiet. I expected you to think I called you here for punishment, Veth said. Or perhaps dismissal. You embarrassed a cadet from an important family. Such things have consequences. Yuna said nothing. She waited. Veth turned around. His scales were still that neutral gray, impossible to read. But I did not call you here for that. He gestured to the holographic display. Look, the display showed combat footage. Not from the Academy, but from somewhere else. Ships fighting in the darkness of space. Stations burning. Soldiers dying. 3 months ago, our border outposts began to report strange incidents, Veth said. Ships appearing and disappearing. Communication systems failing. At first, we thought it was equipment malfunction. Then outposts started going dark. 3 so far. No survivors. No explanation. Yuna watched the footage. The attacking ships moved with perfect coordination, like they shared one mind. Their weapons cut through coalition defenses, like they knew exactly where the weak points were. 2 weeks ago, we captured a scout vessel, Veth continued. The technology inside was familiar. Modified versions of designs we retired decades ago. Weapons that combine Rithani engineering with Velith targeting systems with Makra armor. He paused. Someone has been watching us for a very long time. Learning from us. Preparing. Who? Yuna asked. We do not know yet. Veth closed the display and turned to face her fully. But I did not call you here just to show you classified information. He pulled up another file. Numbers and graphs filled the air between them. This is your academy entrance exam. Your scores in pattern recognition and adaptive response were the highest in your year. Yuna blinked. I did not know that. Not just among humans, Veth said. Among all species. The words hung in the air. Yuna did not know how to respond. I need cadets who can think differently, Veth continued. Our enemies have studied our tactics, our weaknesses, our patterns. They know how we fight. I need people who can fight in ways they have not predicted. He looked at her with those 4 unreadable eyes. I believe you are one of those people. Before Yuna could answer, an alarm began to sound through the station. Veth's communicator activated. A voice spoke rapidly in Coalition Standard. Commander, we have detected anomalous signals from Listening Post 7. Possible hostile infiltration. Veth's scales flickered blue for just a moment. Then gray again. Assemble a reconnaissance team. 5 cadets, mixed species. He looked at Yuna. The human will lead. 20 minutes later, Yuna stood in a corridor on the station's outer ring with her team. Tai Wu was there, checking his weapon with practiced hands. June stood beside him, her sharp eyes scanning the shadows ahead. Dahun had volunteered, despite his injuries from the match. And Sira, the Velith from Yuna's barracks, had been assigned for her telepathic abilities. The listening post is 200 meters ahead, Yuna said quietly. We move in pairs. Stay quiet. If you see anything strange, signal before acting. They moved through the maintenance corridors like ghosts. The outer sections of the station were dark and cold, filled with pipes and cables and the constant hum of machinery. Few people came here. It was the perfect place for secrets. The listening post was a small room filled with communication equipment. The door was open. That was the first wrong thing. Yuna signaled for the team to stop. She moved forward alone, pressing herself against the wall beside the door. She listened. Nothing. She looked inside. The equipment had been modified. Strange devices had been attached to the coalition transmitters, piggybacking on official channels. Someone had been using this post to spy on the academy. Someone inside the station, Tai Wu muttered when he saw it. Someone with access. Sira suddenly grabbed Yuna's arm. The Velith's dark eyes were wide with fear. Movement, she whispered. Multiple. Coming fast. The attackers appeared from both ends of the corridor at once. They wore no uniforms, no identification. Their weapons were strange combinations of different species technology. Just like the footage Veth had shown her, the fighting started immediately. Yuna had trained for combat her entire life, but this was different. These enemies knew exactly how to counter each species. They used dampening fields that blocked Sira's telepathy, sonic disruptors that hurt Dohan's sensitive hearing, weapons that found the gaps in Makra armor. The team was pinned down within seconds. Fall back. Yuna shouted, but there was nowhere to fall back to. The corridor was a trap. One of the attackers broke through their line. He was young, barely older than a cadet, with a face that showed no emotion. He aimed a device at Yuna, not a weapon. A scanner. He was trying to identify her species for targeting parameters. The scanner fired. Yuna did not think. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. Her hand shot out and closed around the scanner's lens housing just as it activated. The beam died in her grip. The device cracked under her fingers. The attacker froze. Yuna looked at him with cold eyes. Earthborn, she said quietly. Try again. She moved. 2 strikes. The attacker fell. Tai Wu saw what happened and pressed forward with renewed energy. Daohan roared and charged, ignoring the pain from the sonic disruptors. June and Sira covered them from behind. The tide turned. One by one, the attackers fell. When it was over, 3 of them were still alive, unconscious and bound. Yuna stood in the middle of the corridor, breathing hard. Her hand hurt where she had grabbed the scanner. She looked down and saw burn marks on her palm. Taiwo appeared beside her. "That was impossible," he said. "What you did, catching that beam." "It was not impossible," Yuna replied. "It was just unexpected." They brought the captured attackers back to Commander Veth. The commander examined them in silence for a long moment. His scales shifted through colors Yuna had never seen before. "These are not from any known species," he said finally. "Their genetic structure is—" He paused. "Artificial. They are hybrids. Engineered. Designed." "Designed by who?" June asked. Veth looked at the captured attackers, at their strange weapons, at the technology that combined the best of every coalition species. "Someone who knows us very well," he said. "Someone who has been watching and learning and preparing." His scales turned dark. "Someone who has been building an army. And they have been using us as the blueprint." The room fell silent. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant, full of enemies they had never known existed. The war was coming, and humanity was about to discover just how much the galaxy had underestimated them. The captured attackers did not speak at first. They sat in their cells with empty eyes, waiting for something. But the coalition interrogators were patient, and slowly, piece by piece, the truth came out. His name was Hyunwoo. He was human. Or he had been once. 30 years ago, he had been a brilliant scientist working on genetic research for the coalition. He had believed that humanity would never be accepted as equals, that the other species would always see them as primitive newcomers. So he decided to force the issue. He defected. He disappeared into the outer territories with stolen research and forbidden technology. And for 30 years, he had been working on his masterpiece, a new species. Hybrids that combine the strengths of every coalition race. Soldiers that were stronger than Rithani, smarter than Veleth, tougher than Makra. Perfect warriors, designed to prove that humans could create something superior to anything nature had made. His army had been growing in the darkness, testing coalition defenses, learning, preparing, and now they were ready. Commander Veth called an emergency assembly. Every cadet, every instructor, every officer on Corinth 7 gathered in the main hall to hear the news. "An attack is coming," Veth said. His voice carried across the silent crowd. "We do not know exactly when, but it will be soon. Our enemies have studied us for decades. They know our tactics, our weaknesses, our blind spots. They were designed to defeat us." He paused. His scales shifted slowly through shades of blue and gray. "But they were designed from what we were," he continued, "not what we can become." He announced the formation of rapid response squads, mixed species teams that would fight together as one. Volunteers only. No one would be forced. When he asked for squad leaders, Yuna stepped forward. Veth nodded. "The human will command Squad 7. Volunteers?" Dohan stepped forward first. His golden scales were bright in the hall lights. Behind him, Taiwo and June moved to join. Then Sira. Then others, Rithani, Veleth, Makra. Species that had once looked down on humans, now choosing to fight beside them. Within minutes, the squad was full. The attack came 3 days later. Hyunwoo's fleet emerged from behind. Corinth 7's moon like ghosts made solid. Sleek hybrid vessels that moved with perfect coordination, their weapons already firing before coalition sensors could fully identify them. The Academy's defenses held at first. Shield generators absorbed the initial bombardment. Fighter squadrons launched to meet the enemy. But the hybrids adapted faster than anyone expected. They changed tactics in real time, finding weaknesses that should have been impossible to discover. Yuna's squad was deployed to defend the primary shield generator. Intelligence suggested it would be targeted for sabotage. If the shields fell, the station would be torn apart. They moved through the station's corridors at combat speed. The sounds of battle echoed through the walls. Explosions, weapons fire, screaming. The station was bleeding. The generator room was massive, filled with humming machinery that kept the station alive. Yuna's squad spread out, covering all entry points, weapons ready. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then the door opened, and Hyunwoo walked in. He was old. His hair was white, his face lined with decades of exile and obsession. But his eyes burned with something that time had not touched. He walked slowly, calmly, as if the battle outside meant nothing to him. Behind him, hybrid soldiers filled the doorway, their weapons aimed at the squad. "Do not," Hyunwoo said simply. "I have a dead man switch linked to this generator. If I die, the shields fall and everyone on this station dies with them." Yuna raised her hand. Her squad held their fire. Hyunwoo studied her with curious eyes. "You are the one they talk about. The human who defeated a Rathani. The human who caught a scanner beam with her bare hands." He smiled slightly. "I designed my soldiers to be better than any natural species. But I never designed anyone who could do what you did." "What do you want?" Yuna asked. "I want what I've always wanted." Hyunwoo spread his arms, gesturing at the station, at the stars beyond. "Recognition, respect. I want the Coalition to see that humans are not inferior. That we can create warriors that surpass anything their precious evolution produced." "You made weapons," Yuna said. "Not people. What is the difference?" "We choose." Hyunwoo laughed. It was not a happy sound. Choice. The favorite word of those who have never been powerless. I chose too, you know. I chose to refuse the role they gave us. Primitive newcomers. Tolerated guests. I chose to become something more. And how many have died for your choice? The question hit something in him. His face flickered, just for a moment, before the mask returned. "Progress requires sacrifice," he said. Yuna shook her head slowly. "My grandmother used to tell me about Earth, about the wars we fought. Millions dead. Cities burned. Generations destroyed. She took a step forward, and then we rebuilt. Every time. Not because we forgot, because we chose to try again. Pretty words. They are not words. They are history. Another step. You think the Coalition sees us as primitive because we are weak. But they see us as primitive because we destroyed ourselves. Over and over. And they are right." Hyunwoo's hand tightened on the dead man switch. "But we are still here," Yuna continued. "Not because we are stronger than anyone else. Not because we have 4 arms or telepathy or armor. We are still here because we refuse to stop. Because when everything burns, we look at the ashes and say, 'Let us build something new.'" She stopped, close enough to touch him now. Close enough to see the doubt flickering in his eyes. "Your soldiers are perfect," she said quietly. "But they do not choose. They follow. They obey. That is not strength. That is just a different kind of weakness." Behind her, Syrah moved silently. The Velitha's eyes were closed, her mind reaching out, not to attack, but to share. She found the door to Hyunwoo's memories and opened it, and she showed him something. She showed him Dohan taking Yuna's hand in the arena. The Rathani who had hated humans, who had fought to prove them inferior, choosing to stand with one. Not because he was forced, because he wanted to. Hyunwoo's grip on the switch faltered. In that moment, Taiwu moved. Fast and precise, the way humans had learned to move through centuries of fighting each other. The switch was disabled before Hyunwoo could react. The old man stood there, empty-handed, surrounded by enemies. His hybrid soldiers looked to him for orders, but he had none to give. "It is over," Yuna said. Hyunwoo looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, the fire went out of his eyes. He suddenly looked very old and very tired. "Perhaps," he said, "I was the primitive one after all." Without their leader, the hybrid fleet lost coordination. The perfect warriors, designed to fight as one, began to fall apart. Coalition forces pressed the advantage. Within hours, the battle was over. 3 months later, Una stood in the Academy's graduation hall, but not as a student. She wore the uniform of a coalition officer now, newly commissioned as the liaison between human and coalition training programs. Commander Veth presented her commission personally. His scales were a color she had never seen before, warm gold, like sunlight through honey. "You were right," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "About adaptability. It was never a weakness." "It never was," Una agreed. Across the hall, she saw familiar faces. Taiwu, also commissioned, already talking about his next assignment. June, accepting congratulations with her usual sharp-eyed skepticism. Syrah, surrounded by her Velith family, who had traveled across the galaxy to see her graduate. And Dohan. The Rathani caught her eye across the room. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then he inclined his head, a gesture of respect between equals. Una returned it. Later, after the ceremony, Una walked alone to an observation deck on the outer ring of the station. Through the viewport, she could see Earth, blue and green and brown, wrapped in white clouds, impossibly small against the darkness of space. 18 years ago, humans had joined the coalition. They had arrived with nothing but their stubbornness and their scars, and their refusal to stay down. Now they had earned their place. Una pressed her hand against the cold glass of the viewport. She thought about her grandmother, long dead now, who had never seen the stars up close. She thought about all the generations of humans who had fought and died and rebuilt, never knowing that their children would one day stand among the stars. "The small stone breaks the river," she whispered. Behind her, the station hummed with life. Aliens and humans working together, training together. Learning that strength came in many forms. The first 18 years had been a trial. The next 18, Una thought, would be something else entirely. She smiled and walked back toward the light.